Hand me the curved forceps, please. We are ready for the implant placement.
Here you are, doctor.
Check the alignment on the screen. We need to ensure the distal cut matches the prosthesis exactly.
Confirmed, doctor.
The room was quiet, except for the faint beep of the monitor and the soft hum of the IV pump. Morning sunlight filtered through the half-closed blinds, casting long pale lines across the hospital bed where Ethan lay. His eyes, once full of mischief and light, now stared blankly out the window. A cold October morning outside, the kind he used to love, the kind that meant jackets and chasing his dog, Max, around the backyard until their lungs ached from laughing too hard. But today, he could barely lift his head from the pillow. His mother sat in the chair beside him, her hand resting lightly over his. She hadn't slept in the bed across the room in weeks. There was no point. She stayed there in that chair, watching every breath her son took, listening for change, hoping for it, and dreading it all the same. On the floor beside the door were Ethan's shoes, scuffed, muddied from months ago, still knotted the way he had left them. She hadn't touched them since. Something about moving them felt like crossing a line she wasn't ready for, like admitting he wouldn't need them again. She reached down and picked one up gently. The toe was worn. A hole had started to form in the fabric, probably from where he used to drag his foot when he ran. She brought it to her chest and closed her eyes. It had all started so small, a twinge, a limp, a laugh. Just growing pains, Mom. 6 months ago, those were the words he used. That's all he said as he rubbed the back of his knee, grimacing slightly before brushing it off. She had smiled, kissed his forehead, and told him to stretch before bed. Every kid had growing pains, didn't they? They came and went like thunderstorms in spring, only this one hadn't gone. It had stayed and grown and spread. She looked at Ethan now, her boy who once couldn't sit still long enough to finish his cereal, her boy who had memorized every baseball card stat, who named constellations on summer nights, who used to ask if dogs went to heaven. Now his skin was pale and thin, his cheekbones sharp under fragile skin, and his hands, once constantly in motion, were limp by his sides. She leaned forward and stroked his hair, or what little was left of it. He didn't react. He had drifted in and out all morning, murmuring nonsense in his sleep, sometimes just breathing slowly and staring out the window, as if waiting. She whispered, "I remember the day you tripped in the yard, remember? Max ran back to you, licking your face, and you laughed even though you winced. You said it was nothing." She paused, her voice catching. "You said it was nothing." She looked back down at the shoe in her hands, as if it could give her an answer. It couldn't. None of this made sense. 12-year-old boys weren't supposed to end up in oncology wards. They weren't supposed to know what cisplatin or limb-sparing surgery meant. They weren't supposed to talk about heaven like it was something real and close. She sat back in the chair, cradling the shoe to her chest. "You were running that day," she said softly. "You were flying." A soft knock on the door made her flinch. A nurse poked her head in. "He's still resting?" she asked gently. She nodded. "Still resting." The nurse offered a small smile and stepped back out, leaving the door ajar. She turned back to Ethan. His lashes fluttered. Maybe he was dreaming. She hoped he was running in that dream, the wind in his face, Max barking joyfully behind him. He whispered then, barely audible, "Mom?" She leaned in quickly. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." His lips parted, a whisper. "Do you think it would have changed if we knew sooner?" She closed her eyes. How many nights had she asked herself the same question? She didn't answer. She couldn't. His eyes slowly closed again, and in the silence, she remembered. She remembered it all. 6 months earlier, the world was simpler. The backyard was Ethan's kingdom, a modest patch of grass, enclosed by a crooked wooden fence, slightly overgrown in the corners where the mower couldn't reach. Max, their golden retriever, chased invisible squirrels near the lilac bushes, while Ethan ran circles in the fading light of a spring evening. his sneakers pounding against the earth. His laughter floated through the open kitchen window, where his mother stirred a pot of spaghetti, humming along to an old Carole King song playing softly on the radio. "Ethan, dinner in 10, she called out, wiping her hands on a towel. "Last lap," he shouted back. "Max is winning." The dog barked, tail wagging furiously, as Ethan sprinted toward the far end of the yard. His stride was long and effortless, the kind only 12-year-olds possessed, still unencumbered by weight, by worry, by the concept of time. As he rounded the corner of the shed, his foot caught a slight rise in the ground, and his momentum carried him forward. He stumbled, twisting awkwardly mid-air, before hitting the ground with a thud. Max immediately stopped, trotted over, and began licking his face. Ethan groaned, rolling onto his side. His mother, hearing the sound, opened the back door. "Ethan!" "I'm okay," he shouted, sitting up slowly and rubbing his right leg just above the knee. "I tripped," Max barked once, as if to confirm the story. She stepped out onto the porch, half amused, half worried. "You sure you're all right?" "Yeah," he said, forcing a smile. "Just growing pains." She nodded, a bit distracted. It wasn't the first time he'd said that. He'd mentioned his legs hurting a few nights earlier, once while brushing his teeth, another time after soccer practice. But she remembered hearing the same thing when he was 9, then again at 10. Growth spurts. Everyone said boys Ethan's age got them. The pediatrician had even joked about it at their last checkup. "You'll shoot up like a weed one day. That's when the knees will start complaining." So she smiled. "All right, race you to the kitchen. Loser does dishes." Ethan jumped up, winced slightly, then jogged with a limp. Max bounded ahead, already certain of victory. Inside, the scent of garlic and tomatoes greeted them. The small kitchen buzzed with warmth and routine. Bah, Ethan's grandmother, sat at the table slicing strawberries with steady hands. She was visiting for the week, having taken the train from Cincinnati with a suitcase full of old family recipes and a rosary she never left behind. "You were limping," Bea noted, peering at Ethan over her glasses. "I fell," Ethan said with a shrug, sliding into his seat. Ba gave his leg a quick glance. "Maybe he needs more calcium. You let him drink soda too much." His mother chuckled, setting a plate in front of him. "He drinks more milk than I do. It's the sugar, weakens the bones." Ethan rolled his eyes playfully and dug into his food. Later that night, as he climbed the stairs to his bedroom, he paused midway and rubbed the same spot on his leg. His mother, turning off lights in the living room, noticed. "You all right?" she asked. "Just sore," he said. "I landed weird." "Okay, stretch a little before bed, all right?" "Yeah," he called back, already closing the door behind him. In her room, she opened her laptop to finish up a shift report for the clinic. Her mind was full of patients she'd seen that week, an elderly man with unmanaged diabetes, a young woman with postpartum depression. Compared to that, Ethan's sore leg felt inconsequential, common. She didn't even think to write it down. But later that night, when she passed by his room on her way to the bathroom, she heard movement. Slow, careful. She opened the door a crack. Ethan was standing beside his bed, gingerly rotating his leg, stretching it forward, backward, then gently massaging the back of his knee. "You okay?" He turned, startled. "Yeah, just trying that stretch thing. Does it still hurt?" "A little. It's more like annoying." She stepped inside and crouched down. "Let me see." He pulled up the leg of his pajama pants. There was no bruise, no swelling. She pressed gently along the back of his knee. He didn't flinch. "Nothing's broken," she said. "You're just getting tall, buddy. Comes with the territory." He gave a crooked grin. "Then I better be 6 foot by summer. Deal. If you're not, I get your Halloween candy." He laughed. It was a good sound. That night she fell asleep quickly. In the quiet hours before dawn, she didn't hear him stir. She didn't see him shift in bed, reposition his leg, or press his hand against it beneath the covers. In the morning she found him already dressed, backpack on. "Early bird," she said, surprised. "I didn't sleep much," he replied, tying his shoes. "I just kept thinking about our history quiz." "History?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "Are you sure that's what kept you up?" He hesitated. "And my leg a little. But it's better." She nodded, kissed the top of his head, and sent him off with a granola bar. After he left, she stood at the window, watching him disappear down the street. Something tugged at her, a whisper of unease. She dismissed it. He had fallen, that was all. Kids fell, they bruised, they healed, and besides, he said it was getting better. By the end of the week, the ache had returned. It wasn't dramatic. There was no collapse, no visible injury, nothing urgent enough to ring alarms. But it was there, quietly pulsing behind Ethan's right knee like a drumbeat only he could hear. It started when he lay down at night, intensifying in the silence, when the distractions of the day faded and he was alone with it. At first, he didn't tell his mother again. She was always tired when she got home, her scrubs wrinkled and dark under the arms, her eyes heavy but still full of energy when she saw him. She asked how school was, what he wanted for dinner, if Max had behaved. He didn't want to ruin that with something as small as a sore leg, so he kept it to himself. But that Friday night, as she came into his room to tuck him in, she noticed him shifting uncomfortably under the blanket. "Your leg again?" she asked. He hesitated, then nodded. "It's not bad, just annoying. Where does it hurt?" He pointed just above his knee, toward the inner thigh, kinda deep, like inside the bone. She frowned slightly but didn't let it show. She sat on the edge of the bed, reached over to the drawer and pulled out a small blue jar of menthol cream. "Let's try this tonight," she said, unscrewing the lid. "It helped when you sprained your ankle last year, remember?" He nodded, wincing slightly as she rubbed the cool gel into his leg. "You've been running around like crazy," she added, trying to sound light. "Maybe you just overdid it this week." "Yeah," he murmured. "Probably." She kissed his forehead. "Stretch before bed, no more races with Max for now. Deal?" "Deal." He smiled, but it was thin. After she left, he stared at the ceiling in the dark, legs straight out in front of him, afraid to bend the right one too far. He could feel it throbbing, low and constant, like a warning signal just beneath his skin. Over the weekend, he stayed indoors more than usual. It rained on Saturday, which gave him an excuse. On Sunday, the clouds cleared, and Max stood by the back door whining to go out, leash in mouth. Ethan sat on the couch watching cartoons, petting the dog without getting up. His mother noticed. "Don't you want to go out with him?" Ethan shrugged. "My leg still kinda hurts, still?" she asked, brows furrowing. He nodded. "It's not awful, it just feels weird, like it gets tighter when I move too much." She knelt down beside him and checked his leg again. Still no swelling, no redness. She pressed gently along the muscle. "Nothing's warm. No bruising, maybe a pulled muscle?" "I didn't pull anything," he said. "It just started hurting." You've probably just been growing again. I swear you look taller than you did last month. You always say that." "Because it's always true." He grinned, then leaned back. She brought him an ice pack just in case and told him to rest it. On Monday morning, she received a phone call at work. It was from Ethan's gym teacher. "Nothing urgent," the teacher said, "but I just wanted to check in. Ethan's been sitting out during gym. Says his leg hurts. It's probably nothing, but thought you'd want to know." Her stomach tightened slightly. "Thank you. I'll talk to him." That night, she brought it up casually over dinner. "Coach said you didn't do PE today?" Ethan looked up from his plate. "It was the mile run. I didn't feel up to it." "Because of your leg?" He nodded. "It gets worse when I run. It feels like, I don't know, like someone's squeezing my bone." She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "Squeezing your bone?" "Yeah, not like muscle sore, like deep inside, and only in one spot." That was the first time he'd described it that way. The words unsettled her. Bone pain. It wasn't a phrase she liked. She was a nurse. She'd heard patients say it before, adults mostly, older ones, usually with arthritis or worse. But this was her 12-year-old son, and kids got weird pains all the time, didn't they? Still, that night, when Ethan went to bed, she sat on the couch and opened her laptop. She searched bone pain in children, not really expecting anything serious. Most results were predictable: growing pains, overuse injuries, Sever's disease. But as she scrolled further, she paused on an article titled, "Could it be something more? When to take childhood bone pains seriously." She clicked. The article began with a cautionary tone. While most childhood leg pain is harmless, persistent or deep bone pain, especially localized, worse at night, or accompanied by limping, should not be ignored. She read on. Symptoms listed: pain that worsens at night, and pain not related to physical trauma, when swelling or warmth in the area, and limping or decreased activity, fatigue or loss of appetite. She leaned back, heart thudding slightly. Ethan hadn't shown all of those. no swelling, no bruising, but he did limp a little last week. And he wasn't playing outside as much. He said it hurt deep. At night. Her mind began to race. Was she overreacting? Was this what her patients felt when they came into the clinic insisting something was wrong, even when the tests were clean? She closed the laptop and rubbed her eyes. She'd wait a few more days, just to see. If it got worse, they'd go in for x-rays. No harm in waiting a bit longer. 2 nights later, Ethan was up again. This time, she heard him whimper. She walked into his room and found him curled on his side, clutching his leg. "Sweetheart, it hurts, Mom," he said, voice shaking. "It hurts so bad." Okay. I'm here." She sat beside him, pulled back the blanket, and placed a hand on his leg. It felt warm, warmer than the other. She didn't like that. "I'll get you something," she said quickly, rushing to the medicine cabinet. When she returned, he took the ibuprofen without complaint, lay back, and closed his eyes. She sat there for a long time, her fingers still on his knee. The next morning, he walked with a noticeable limp. When he climbed into the car, he moved slowly, like every step required focus. She watched him in the rearview mirror. As they drove to school, she didn't say anything, but something deep in her chest had started to shift. A quiet voice she'd ignored before was growing louder. The waiting room smelled like hand sanitizer and laminate flooring. It was bright, artificially cheerful, with outdated magazines stacked on the table and a fish tank humming in the corner. Ethan sat slouched in a chair, his right leg stretched out straight in front of him. His sneaker dangled loose at the heel. His mother sat beside him, filling out the clipboard of intake forms with rapid, efficient strokes. She had taken the morning off work to bring him in. She hadn't wanted to wait any longer. Ethan hadn't slept well again. The pain had flared in the middle of the night, and when she pressed along his thigh, he flinched for the first time. That alone had sent something sharp through her chest. She called the clinic first thing, and was told there was an opening with Dr. Meyer, the same physician who had seen Ethan since kindergarten. A nurse called them back. Ethan limped beside her, slower than usual, clearly guarding the leg. Dr. Meyer entered a few minutes later, friendly and warm as always, his glasses sliding slightly down his nose. Well, Ethan," he said with a smile. "Heard you've been giving your mom a scare." Ethan tried to smile. "Just a little." The doctor tapped at his tablet. "Pain in the leg, right? Tell me about it." "It started like 3 weeks ago," Ethan said. "At first it was just when I ran. Now it kinda hurts all the time. It's like deep, not on the surface." "Any trauma, fall, sports injury?" "I tripped in the yard," Ethan said, glancing at his mom. "But that was before it started." Dr. Meyer nodded thoughtfully, then turned to his mother. "Fever? Loss of appetite? Swelling?" She hesitated. "No fever. No appetite loss that I've noticed. Maybe a little swelling last night. It felt warmer than the other leg." He motioned Ethan up onto the exam table and began palpating gently along the thigh, then the knee. Ethan winced when he reached the inner side. "Pain here?" Ethan nodded. Dr. Meyer leaned back. "Sounds like inflammation, possibly a soft tissue issue, maybe the beginning of tendinitis. Kids his age grow fast, ligaments tighten, muscles pull against bone. Pain's part of the package sometimes. But it's been almost a month," she said carefully. "Right, which is annoying," the doctor agreed, "but not necessarily alarming. I'll prescribe a round of NSAIDs, stronger than over-the-counter, and we'll have him rest, ice, maybe skip gym class for a week or 2. "What about imaging?" she asked. "An X-ray?" Dr. Meyer paused, tilting his head. "Not unless we see specific red flags. No trauma, no visible swelling, no sudden loss of function. He's still walking. MRI would be overkill right now. Plus, insurance won't approve without more concrete symptoms, but his pain is inside the bone." "Yes, but that's also a common description for referred pain. We see that a lot in growing boys. And like I said, without more severe indicators, imaging is not standard protocol. We try not to overtest." She nodded slowly, though something in her stomach twisted. "I get it," he said gently. "You're a mom, you're worried, that's normal. But we also don't want to put Ethan through unnecessary procedures if it's just an overuse issue." Ethan looked at her, uncertain. Dr. Meyer stood. "Let's try the anti-inflammatories. If it doesn't improve in 2 weeks, we'll reassess." "Okay?" "Okay," she said, but her voice felt hollow. He printed the prescription and handed it over with a reassuring smile. "He'll be back to sprinting in no time." Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves danced across the parking lot. She helped Ethan into the car, watching how he gritted his teeth as he bent his knee to climb inside. He tried to hide it. She saw it anyway. Driving home, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been missed. At dinner, Ethan barely touched his food. Max rested his head on the boy's knee under the table, tail thumping gently. "You all right?" she asked. "Yeah. Just tired. You want me to make something else?" He shook his head. "Just not hungry." After he went to bed, she sat with her laptop again, searched more, read patient stories. One from a mother in Pennsylvania caught her eye. "My son was 12 when he started limping. Our doctor said it was growing pains. We waited 6 weeks before insisting on an x-ray. That's when they found the tumor." She felt cold. She clicked through articles, each one echoing the same caution: deep bone pain, night pain, persistent or worsening despite rest. These should never be brushed off. But she couldn't stop hearing Dr. Meyer's voice. "No red flags. Standard protocol. Insurance won't approve." She closed the screen and sat in the dark for a while, listening to the refrigerator hum. She wanted to trust the system. She wanted to believe her son was just growing, just sore from a minor sprain or strain. She wanted to be wrong about what she feared. A week passed. Ethan took the pills, stayed out of gym. He said the medicine helped a little. But sometimes, at night, she'd see him walking down the hallway with his hand pressed to his leg, shoulders tense. He never complained unless she asked. The swelling returned, slight but visible now. When she touched the area, it was warmer again. He pulled away from her fingers. One evening, he came to her room while she folded laundry. "Mom?" She looked up. "Yeah, sweetheart." He was pale, sweaty, his eyes wide. "I can't bend it." She stood immediately, laundry forgotten, and knelt in front of him. He tried, slowly, to bend the leg. It moved an inch, then stopped, his face contorted in pain. "Okay," she said, breath catching. "Okay, sit down. We're going back to the doctor." "But they said—" "I don't care what they said. We're going—" She called the clinic that night, demanded a referral. The receptionist told her they'd check with Dr. Meyer and get back to her in the morning. She didn't wait. At 7 a.m. the next day, she drove Ethan to the hospital. She didn't call ahead. She didn't wait for approval. She marched straight to the ER and told them her son couldn't bend his leg, that he was in pain, that he needed an x-ray now. She didn't care about insurance. The triage nurse took one look at Ethan and waved them in. And just like that, the timeline began to shift. The emergency room was busier than usual. Stretchers lined the walls, nurses moved quickly between beds, and overhead announcements echoed through the corridors. But everything outside faded for her. As Ethan sat on the exam table, his leg extended stiffly in front of him, eyes glassy with pain. She held his hand as they waited. It had taken 3 hours to get the x-ray, another hour before they were told an MRI was necessary. Now it had been nearly 6 hours since they walked through the doors. Ethan hadn't complained once, not about the waiting, not about the pain. That, more than anything, terrified her. When the door opened, a young doctor entered. He didn't smile. His face was composed, too composed. He held a folder in his hands, though she could see the scans already pulled up on the monitor behind him. "Mrs. Lorne?" he said gently. She stood. "Yes, I'm Dr. Patel, one of the pediatric orthopedic specialists here. I've reviewed Ethan's x-rays and MRI." He paused, and her heart dropped into her stomach. "There's a mass in the distal femur," he continued, nodding toward the screen. "It's located at the lower part of his right thigh bone, near the growth plate." She stared at him, then the image, a grayscale snapshot of her son's leg, with a darkened blur around the bone, something that didn't belong. "What does that mean?" she asked, voice low. Dr. Patel exhaled. "We suspect it's a tumor, most likely osteosarcoma." The word didn't land at first. It sounded clinical, neutral, then it hit. "Tumor, cancer." Ethan blinked. "What's that?" She turned to him, saw the fear rising in his face like a storm cloud. Dr. Patel sat on the stool beside the bed. "Osteosarcoma is a kind of bone cancer. It's rare but not unheard of, especially in kids your age." Ethan stared at him, confused. "But I just thought it was growing pains." "I know," the doctor said softly. "It's very easy to mistake early symptoms for that." She couldn't breathe. "How bad is it?" she asked. What happens now?" "We'll need to do a biopsy to confirm the diagnosis," he said. "It's scheduled for tomorrow morning. After that, we'll have more details. Stage, aggressiveness, treatment options." Ethan looked down at his leg, as if it belonged to someone else. So, I really have cancer? His mother reached for him, but he didn't move. The doctor nodded slowly. We believe so, but we're acting quickly. That's the good news. It's localized for now, and we'll begin treatment immediately if the biopsy confirms it. Will I lose my leg? Ethan asked suddenly. The room went still. Dr. Patel paused before answering. Our goal is always to save the limb. There are procedures called limb-sparing surgeries, but everything depends on the biopsy results and how the tumor responds to treatment. Ethan nodded, but his eyes were far away. When the doctor left, the silence in the room was deafening. She sat beside Ethan and took his hand. It felt smaller than it had a week ago. I don't want to lose my leg, he whispered. I know, she said, swallowing hard. We'll do everything we can. He looked at her, eyes full of something she'd never seen before. Not just fear, but understanding. Am I going to die? Her throat closed. She felt tears rising, hot and sudden. No, she said firmly. No, you're not. We caught it early. They're going to treat it. You're strong, Ethan. He didn't look convinced. That night, she sat awake in the chair beside his hospital bed, staring at the ceiling while machines beeped softly around them. He had fallen asleep after the IV sedative. His face was pale, his body curled slightly to one side. She couldn't stop thinking about the past month, the missed signals, the shrugged-off pain, the way she'd told him it was nothing, just growing pains. The phrase replayed like a taunt in her mind. She remembered the articles she had read, the ones that said bone cancer was often diagnosed late because the symptoms were vague, easy to dismiss, especially in active boys, especially in growing kids. She remembered the doctor telling her imaging wasn't necessary. Standard protocol. Insurance won't approve, but none of that mattered now. At 3 a.m. she finally stood and walked quietly to the hallway. The hospital was quiet, dimly lit. She leaned against the wall and cried quietly into her hands, not just because of what was ahead, but because she hadn't listened sooner. In the morning, the biopsy went quickly, though waiting for results felt endless. Ethan was groggy afterward, quiet and withdrawn. She tried to make small talk, but his eyes stayed on the ceiling. A nurse came by with a therapy dog, a golden retriever named Buddy. For a moment, Ethan smiled. He looks like Max, he whispered, stroking the dog's ear. She took a picture of him in that moment, just in case. Later that day, Dr. Patel returned. The results were back. It was confirmed. Osteosarcoma, high grade, stage TB. We'll begin chemotherapy tomorrow, he said. 3 cycles to shrink the tumor, then surgery. After that, more chemo to reduce recurrence risk. Will he be okay? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Every case is different, he said, but the survival rate with treatment is around 60 to 70%. She nodded slowly. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it wasn't no. After the doctor left, Ethan sat up and looked at her. So, we start fighting tomorrow? Yes, she said, brushing his hair back. We start tomorrow. Okay. He looked down at his fourth. Do I get to keep my hair? She smiled, though it trembled. We'll see. Chemotherapy started on a Monday. The nurses moved gently, quietly, like people who had done this too many times and still hadn't learned how to do it without heartbreak. The IV pole followed Ethan everywhere now, through the hallways, into the bathroom. Even during the short walks he was encouraged to take twice a day. The medicine had a smell, not strong but metallic, something sharp that lingered even after the nurse flushed the line. Ethan didn't complain, not at first. He watched the bag drip slowly into his arm and asked questions about how it worked. So it kills the cancer cells, right? He said. Does it kill the good cells too? The nurse answered kindly, and he nodded, absorbing it all like a student learning a complicated math problem. He lost his appetite by day 3. By day 5, his stomach twisted at the smell of food. His mother tried everything: toast, plain rice, applesauce, chicken broth. He tried to eat for her sake, but the nausea always won. Still, he smiled through it. When the doctors explained the surgery, he listened carefully. We're planning limb-sparing surgery, Dr. Patel said. We'll remove the tumor along with part of the bone and insert a titanium rod in its place. You'll be able to walk again. It'll just take time and therapy. Ethan looked at him. So I'll be part robot? Dr. Patel chuckled. In a way. Cool, he said. Do I get a certificate or something? His mother smiled for the first time in days. They scheduled the operation 3 weeks into chemo, after the first round was complete. In the meantime, Ethan adjusted to his new world: nurses, beeping machines, blood draws, early morning vitals. He decorated his room with baseball posters and superhero stickers. A handmade sign taped to the wall read, "Iron Man lives here." He insisted on it, because if I have metal in my leg, he said, that makes me Iron Man, right? You're definitely tougher than Tony Stark, Rachel said, smiling. Rachel was a young oncology nurse, in her late 20s, with short brown hair and a voice that never raised above calm. She had been assigned to Ethan's room from the beginning, and over time, became more than a nurse. She brought him card games, downloaded movies on her tablet for him to watch, and told silly hospital stories to make him laugh. He adored her. She reminded him of an older sister he never had. Sometimes she stayed after her shift just to sit with him. "Don't let the IV pole boss you around," she told him once. "You're still in charge." He made a face. "Tell that to my stomach." During those early days, another patient moved into the room next door, a boy named Tyler, 13, also going through chemo, though for leukemia. Tyler had been in and out of the hospital for 2 years and knew every nurse by name. He walked into Ethan's room like he owned it. "Hi, I heard you're the new Iron Man." "That's me," Ethan replied. "I'm just Tyler, no cool nickname, but I did throw up in the hallway last week and they named the mop after me." Ethan grinned. "Nice." They clicked instantly. Most afternoons, when they weren't too tired, the boys played video games on Tyler's handheld console, or traded jokes that made Rachel shake her head but secretly smile. Tyler explained how to cheat the vending machine and which nurses gave out extra pudding. He showed Ethan the secret rooftop garden on the 6th floor, a small terrace with 2 benches and a few potted plants barely clinging to life. "This is where I go when I need to remember I'm not just my blood work," Tyler said. Ethan nodded. "It smells like freedom out here." Back in the room, his mother watched him carefully. She saw the color drain slowly from his cheeks, the circles deepen under his eyes, but also glimpsed sparks of something else: resilience. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. When the nurse accidentally missed his vein during a blood draw, he flinched but said, "It's okay." She admired him more than he knew. The day of surgery arrived under gray skies. He was wheeled into pre-op just before dawn, his mother walking beside him, holding his hand. He looked so small in the hospital gown, his hair already thinning, but his eyes were steady. "Will it hurt when I wake up?" "Yes," she said, "but they'll help you. Will you be there, always?" He nodded. The surgery lasted 5 hours. She waited in the family lounge, drinking bad coffee and staring at the same paragraph in a magazine for 2 hours straight. When Dr. Patel finally emerged, she stood before he even said a word. "It went well," he said. "We removed the tumor and replaced the femoral section with the titanium rod. There was no visible spread beyond the localized area. He's stable and recovering now." She felt her knees weaken and sat down before she fell. "He'll have a long recovery," the doctor added. "Physical therapy will be intense, but he's strong." She nodded, blinking back tears. When she saw Ethan again, he was pale, groggy, hooked up to more machines than ever, but alive. The scar ran along his thigh like a railroad track, thick and angry. She wanted to weep at the sight of it. Instead, she smiled. "Hey, Iron Man." He opened his eyes slowly and smiled. "They get it all? They got it all." He reached weakly for her hand. That night, as he dozed off, he whispered, "I'm still me, right?" She pressed a kiss to his forehead. "Always." Ethan's recovery after surgery was slow, painful, and full of small victories. The first time he stood on his leg, even with the walker and braces, the room erupted in soft applause. Rachel had brought balloons. Tyler made a joke about turning him into a cyborg. His mother cried, but only when he wasn't looking. Physical therapy became a part of their daily rhythm: morning stretches, balance work, slow walks down the hallway with a gait belt secured tightly around his waist. Ethan hated the exercises at first. Everything hurt. But the more he pushed through the pain, the more he began to believe in the possibility of normal again. "I'm going to run again one day," he said once, sweat clinging to his brow. "You will," his mother replied, even though part of her heart clenched every time she said it. He gained some weight back. His cheeks filled out a little. He even laughed more. Real laughs, not the forced kind he used when trying to protect her from worry. Friends from school visited again, bringing comics and stupid inside jokes. His teacher sent a card signed by the entire class. For a while it felt like they were on the upswing. After the second round of chemo ended, they scheduled a routine follow-up, full blood work, and a chest CT scan. "It's standard," Dr. Patel said. "Osteosarcoma has a tendency to spread to the lungs, but we're hopeful." Ethan wasn't nervous. He was excited to tell the doctor how strong his leg was getting, how he was down to one crutch most days, how he had drawn up plans for a bionic enhancement using magnets and Velcro. The scan was done in 15 minutes. It took another 4 hours for the results to come back. They were sitting in his hospital room when Dr. Patel returned. This time he didn't smile. She knew before he spoke. "I'm so sorry," he said quietly. "There are nodules in both lungs." The room tilted slightly. Her ears buzzed. Ethan blinked as if trying to process a language he didn't understand. "What's a nodule?" he asked. "It's a small spot," Dr. Patel explained. "It could be infection. It could be scar tissue. But given your history, we have to assume the possibility of metastasis." "Cancer in my lungs?" Ethan asked. "Yes," the doctor said gently. "We'll need to run more tests to confirm, but these findings are concerning." His mother's hand found his. He didn't squeeze back. "How?" she whispered. "He's been getting better." Dr. Patel looked at her with sympathy. "Sometimes cancer cells travel through the bloodstream early. They can remain undetectable, for weeks, even months." "What now?" she asked, her voice shaking. "We'll do a biopsy to confirm. If it is metastatic disease, we'll explore a new chemotherapy regimen, stronger. Possibly a clinical trial. Is that covered by our insurance?" He hesitated. "Clinical trials often aren't. We'll have to apply." "There's a process." Of course there was. They biopsied the largest nodule the next morning. The results came back 3 days later. It was cancer. Ethan didn't speak for most of the day. He lay on his side, facing the window, watching gray clouds roll across the sky. She sat beside him, helpless, every cell in her body screaming to fix something she couldn't reach. That evening, Rachel came in during shift change. She brought a deck of cards and a chocolate milkshake. "You're still Iron Man," she said gently, setting the milkshake on the tray. "Am I?" he asked, not turning. "Yeah. Even more now." He didn't answer. His mother met Rachel in the hallway afterward. "He's shutting down," she said quietly. "He won't talk to me." "He's scared," Rachel replied. "But he's listening, even when he's quiet." They sat together in the family conference room later that night, going over treatment options with Dr. Patel and a new oncologist from the adult unit. "There's an experimental drug being used in cases like Ethan's," the oncologist explained. "It's shown promise in slowing lung metastases. It's not FDA approved for pediatric use, but we can file a compassionate use request." "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means we apply to both the hospital board and your insurance. If approved, we get access to the medication, but the process takes time, and approval isn't guaranteed." "How long?" 2 to 4 weeks. "Sometimes more. And if we don't get it, there's an alternative chemo option. It's more aggressive, has a lower success rate, and harsher side effects." She looked at Ethan, who sat silently beside her. "What are the side effects?" he asked. "Nausea, fatigue, high risk of infection, potential for permanent lung damage." He nodded once. "Okay, we're not agreeing to that," she said sharply. "Not yet." After the meeting, she made phone calls, dozens. She spoke to insurance agents, hospital administrators, even a local congressman's office. Every answer was the same: forms, procedures, wait times. She wanted to scream. Her son was dying, and the system wanted paperwork. Rachel found her that evening in the hallway, staring at the vending machine. "Do you want to go to the rooftop?" Rachel asked softly. She nodded. They sat on the same bench where Tyler had once taken Ethan, beneath string lights someone had hung between the railing and a drain pipe. The plants were still half dead, but something about the quiet felt sacred. "I work with kids every day," Rachel said. "Some make it, some don't, but they all deserve better than this." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I should have pushed harder in the beginning," she whispered. "For the x-ray, for everything. You were doing your best," Rachel replied. "My best wasn't enough." Rachel looked at her. "It never feels like it is. But you're still here, fighting." She looked up at the night sky, searching for a star and finding only clouds. Downstairs, Ethan was in his bed, awake but not sleeping. He reached under his blanket and pressed a hand to his chest. He didn't feel sick. That's what scared him the most. Winter crept in slowly, pressing its cold fingers against the hospital windows. Snow began to fall just after Thanksgiving, a gentle mocking reminder of the world moving on outside. Inside, Ethan was growing smaller, not just in body, but in spirit. He slept more now, ate less. His once bright eyes had dulled into something quiet, resigned. The aggressive chemotherapy had not helped. The shadows in his lungs had multiplied. The oncologist showed the scans without sugarcoating them. "The cancer is progressing," he said flatly, and for the first time she saw Rachel turn away, jaw clenched, eyes wet. "They stopped treatment the following week. There's nothing more we can do," the doctor had said. "At this point, comfort is our priority." Hospice nurses arrived with brochures and soft voices. The room was filled with words she had never wanted to hear: end-of-life care, palliative approach, pain management, family counseling. Ethan didn't seem surprised. That night she sat beside him, watching the snow fall in slow spirals outside the window. "Are you scared?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. "A little," he finally whispered. "Not of dying, I think, just of not being here, not seeing what comes next." She took his hand. "You'll still be with me. I won't get to grow up." "I know," she said, voice cracking. He turned his head slightly. "Is there a heaven?" She hesitated. "I hope so. Do you think Max will be there?" She smiled through the tears. "I'm sure of it. He'll be waiting at the gate with a tennis ball." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then I guess it won't be too bad." The next days passed in a strange kind of stillness. He drifted in and out of sleep, sometimes lucid, sometimes murmuring nonsense from dreams. Once he reached out and said his friend Tyler's name. Another time he asked if it was summer again, if the dog wanted to play. She stayed beside him always. One afternoon, Rachel came in with a soft flannel blanket patterned with stars. "It's not hospital issued," she whispered. "But it's warm, and he likes stars." She helped tuck it around him gently. His breathing was slow, shallow. Rachel looked at her. "You're doing everything right. I feel like I'm doing nothing." "You're here," Rachel said. "That's everything." That night it snowed heavily. Outside, the streetlights glowed amber through the frost. Inside, she sat by Ethan's bed, stroking his hand as machines hummed in the background. The nurse had lowered the lights. The world felt paused. Around midnight, he stirred. "Mom?" She leaned in quickly. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." He struggled to speak. His voice was thin like tissue paper. "I'm tired. I know. You can rest now." He turned his head slowly toward her. "I tried to be brave." "You were, sweetheart. You are," he swallowed. "You don't have to be brave anymore either." Her throat tightened. "I'm not." His lips parted again, barely above a breath. "Promise me something?" "Anything. If a kid tells their mom it hurts, promise you'll tell her to listen, before it's too late." She covered her mouth, the sob rising like a wave. "I promise," she whispered. "I swear." He smiled, a weak, flickering smile that still somehow lit up the room. Then his eyes fluttered closed, and she felt the moment when his hand grew still in hers. Everything in her screamed, but she didn't move. She sat with him until the nurse came in, until the machines went quiet, until the snow had stopped and the sky began to shift into gray. Later, when they removed his belongings from the room, she asked to keep the flannel blanket. The nurse folded it carefully and placed it in her arms like it was sacred, and in many ways it was. At the funeral, people brought flowers and casseroles, shared stories about Ethan's kindness, his courage, his quiet humor. Tyler's parents came too, standing silently at the back of the chapel with tears streaming down their faces. Rachel was there, wearing her hospital ID clipped to her coat, a silent badge of all she had witnessed. But even in the warmth of community, there was no comfort strong enough to patch the hole left in her world. Days passed, then weeks. She moved through them in a fog. Then one day, she found herself holding a microphone in a crowded school auditorium. A local parent group had reached out after hearing Ethan's story. She stood on the stage, holding a folder of notes she never looked at. She began with a photo, a boy with a crooked smile and wild hair, standing next to a golden retriever with a chewed-up tennis ball in its mouth. "This is Ethan," she said. "He was 12. He loved space, dogs, and running through the backyard in his socks." She told them about the limp, the pain, the missed opportunities, the delayed diagnosis. She held up the original X-ray. This could have saved his life if it had been taken 2 months earlier, but it wasn't. Because we didn't push. Because they said it wasn't necessary. Because we trusted the system. She paused. He's gone now, but his words are not. She looked around the room, into the eyes of other parents. He said, "Promise me you'll tell other moms to listen when their kid says it hurts." She wiped her eyes. So I'm keeping that promise. She never imagined herself holding a microphone. Not like this. Not in front of strangers with tear-filled eyes, their hands clutched tightly in their laps, leaning forward as if their own child's life hung on every word. But she did it, again and again. Elementary schools, PTA meetings, pediatric conferences, local news interviews, churches, libraries, anywhere they would let her speak. She carried a small black bag that held 3 things: Ethan's photo, his first x-ray, and a folded copy of the notes he had once written for a school project titled, "Things I Want to Do Before I'm 20. He never made it to 13. Every talk began the same. "My name is Claire Lorne. I'm not a doctor, I'm just a mom. But I'm here because my son Ethan asked me to keep a promise." She would tell them about the limp, the quiet way he first mentioned the pain, the night he couldn't bend his leg, the first x-ray that wasn't ordered, the insurance denial, the diagnosis that came too late. But she didn't stop there. She also told them what to look for. "I'm not here to scare you," she said, "but if your child tells you they have bone pain, deep, persistent, and worse at night, please don't brush it off, especially if there's no swelling, no obvious injury, and it doesn't go away with rest. Ask questions, demand scans. Push, even when the doctor says, it's probably nothing, because sometimes it isn't." She held up the list of signs she now knew too well, and persistent or worsening bone pain, and unrelated to injury, and pain that worsens at night, and swelling or warmth in a limb, unlimping or reduced activity, unexplained fatigue or weight loss. "I'm not saying every limp is cancer," she told them, "but every limp deserves attention." After one presentation at a public school in Indiana, a woman approached her in the parking lot. She was trembling, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "My son has been limping," she said. "He says it hurts behind his knee. Our doctor said it's growing pains, but after what you said, can I get your email, in case I need to talk to someone?" Claire nodded, scribbled her contact info, and hugged her like an old friend. 2 months later, that same mother sent her a letter. It was handwritten, in soft blue ink. "You saved my son. You did." The scan showed a lesion in his femur. "It's early, they're hopeful. I wouldn't have pushed if I hadn't heard you speak. I just wanted you to know. Ethan saved him." Claire read the letter 3 times, her hands trembling each time she folded it back into its envelope. It didn't undo the ache, nothing could. But it did something else, something quieter, deeper. It gave Ethan's story a pulse, a reason. She printed the letter and placed it inside her black speaking folder, right next to the x-ray. At one event, a pediatric oncologist approached her after the session, shaking her hand with both of his. "You've done more to raise awareness in 6 months than we've done in 6 years, he said. "Your voice makes people listen." She smiled, but there was sorrow behind it. "I just wish I'd listened sooner," he nodded. "We all do, but you're helping parents not make the same mistake." As time went on, her message became sharper, more confident. She didn't apologize for taking up space. She didn't sugarcoat the cost of silence. She told them the truth every time. Sometimes when she spoke, she could feel Ethan near. Not in a mystical way, but in the gentle memory of his laugh, the image of his face lighting up at some silly joke, the sensation of his small hand in hers. That was how he stayed alive, in the telling, in the warning, in the hope. And every time she stepped off a stage, someone, always someone, would come up to her with red-rimmed eyes and say, "Thank you, I needed to hear that." So she kept going. She kept telling the story. The shoes were still by the door. Months had passed since the funeral. The snow had melted. Spring crept in slowly, with green shoots pushing up from the earth, as if the world had forgotten winter altogether. But inside the house, nothing moved. Nothing changed. Not really. Claire had tried at first to pack some things away, fold the extra blankets, clear the hospital supplies that had overtaken the living room. But when she reached for his shoes, something inside her refused. They were exactly where Ethan had left them the day they rushed to the hospital for the last time. A little dusty now, the soles worn, the laces still tied in the double knot he always used, so they wouldn't come undone while running. She couldn't bring herself to move them. She sat on the stairs sometimes, just watching them, imagining he might run in through the door, cheeks red from playing outside, throw his backpack onto the floor and say, "What's for dinner?" Like nothing had happened. One quiet morning in April, she received an email. It was short, simple, but it made her sink into the nearest chair and read it twice. "And my daughter is 12. Last month she started limping. Her doctor said growing pains. But I remembered your talk and I pushed. They found the tumor early. She's going to be okay. Because of you. Because of Ethan." Oh, Claire pressed her hand to her mouth. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she stood, crossed the room, and picked up Ethan's shoes. She cradled them against her chest as if they were fragile, as if they still held the shape of his feet, the memory of motion, the sound of laughter echoing through the backyard. She closed her eyes. In her mind he was running again, not limping, not hooked to machines, just running, free and strong, chasing Max down the hill, arms wide, wind in his face, his hair flying, his voice calling out. He was not gone. He was running in every child saved because of his story, in every parent who stopped to ask, "Are you sure it's nothing?" In every mother who pushed for a second opinion, every doctor who listened a little more closely, every nurse who didn't dismiss the small things. He was movement now. He was change. She walked to the hall closet and gently placed his shoes inside, not hidden, but protected, not forgotten, but honored. Later that week, she stood before another room full of parents. She held up his picture, told the story again. This time, her voice didn't break. "This," she said, pointing to the X-ray, "was what they didn't see in time." She paused. "Sometimes the pain we call growing is actually the sound of something breaking inside." Then softer, "So if your child says their leg hurts, would you wait?" A hush fell over the room. She looked at them, eyes steady. "Or would you listen, before the silence takes their place?" Sometimes, the smallest pain can be the earliest warning. A quiet limp, a wince at night, a child saying it just hurts. These are not always things to dismiss. They can be the whispers of something far more serious. Ethan's story is a reminder. Not every ache is harmless, and not every moment can be taken back. His shoes still sit in the closet, not as a memorial but as a message, a symbol of a life that ran fast, loved deeply, and still moves the world through those who choose to listen. So now, I ask you, have you ever missed a sign, or known someone who did? Tell us in the comments. Your story might help someone else listen a little closer. And if this story moved you, please consider subscribing. We share real stories that save lives, spark change, and speak for the voices no longer here to speak for themselves. Because listening just might save everything.